Hello there. A friend posed a really fascinating question to me the other day that got me completely stumped around election signs. They wanted to know whether or not a landlord has the right to demand a tenant take down an election sign that they've agreed to have on their fence line. And you know what? I honestly didn't know, and the only information I could find was from an election over a decade ago. So wasn't really the most up to date. I called the Electoral Commission and they said, well, there's a couple of factors that come into play. You see, if it's a private property, for example, that's shared driveway access or an apartment complex, something like that, they'll have in their tenancy agreement rules around advertising, and that supersedes everything else. There are rules in place around election advertising specifically, so that's down to the size of the billboards, the size of the font, your authorization statement, and when those can go up and come down. But there's nothing in there specifically around landlords dictating to tenants what they can and can't do. There is the Residential Tenancy Agreement Act, which came into force in 1986, and that allows tenants to have something called a quiet enjoyment clause. Basically, your landlord's not allowed to show up and be a dick and tell you what to do whenever they want. This kind of falls into that. But that law was updated in 2020 and 2021, and this now falls under what we would call a minor change, and that's also really specifically covered by the Tenancy Tribunal. Under this new law, if you want to make a minor change to a property, you're supposed to write to your landlord and get permission from them. They can only decline it though if it's something that's going to cause structural damage to the building or the property itself. So in theory, they can't say no to an election sign because they dislike the candidate, but they can certainly draw it out. You see, however long it takes to get that process in, they then have 21 days to get back to the tenant and say, okay, cool, got your email. That's a long time. That's 3 weeks at least that it could take before you can put that sign up. And until then, they do have the right to be able to demand that sign comes down, which could be really problem if you're a renter, for example, who's got people knocking on your door saying you've got a high profile property, can I put up a sign? Most landlords probably aren't going to give a crap because it doesn't actually mean damage to the property, it's nothing long term, but it does fall under that law. And that's really tricky. And that law also covers things like curtains or baby gates or fire alarms. But that law is there, meaning that landlords can, in a way, at least delay tenants being able to show support for candidates that they want to support.